Good evening. The subcommittee will come to order. I want to welcome everyone to the subcommittee markup of the fiscal year 2025 Agriculture, Rural Development, Food and Drug Administration and related agencies appropriations bill. I'm pleased to be joined by our subcommittee ranking member, Mr. Bishop, full committee chairman Cole, and ranking member Delauro, and the members of the subcommittee. As Americans know all too well, our country continues to grapple with inflation driven by the uncontrolled spending of the Biden administration. We simply cannot continue down this path of providing large sums of money with no accountability. This bill takes the same approach American families take every day. They have to do more with less under the Biden economy. American families decide every day where to cut back their spending to pay for what's most important. Sometimes tough decisions have to be made. For fiscal year 2025, the subcommittee's discretionary allocation for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Food and Drug Administration, and the Commodities Futures Trading Commission is $25.873 billion, a $355 million or 1.35% decrease from fiscal year 2024. This legislation supports critical ag research and plant and animal health programs, invests in rural communities, expands access to broadband, provides nutrition assistance to those in need, and ensures that American consumers have a safe food and drug supply. This legislation rejects the Biden administration's unrealistic proposed inflationary spending levels that are detached from the dire fiscal reality our country faces. It also rejects the administration's continued push to bloat an already too large federal bureaucracy. I'd like to highlight a few areas where this legislation prioritizes essential functions while being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. The bill provides $1.15 billion for the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service to support the Department's efforts to protect our producers from foreign plant and animal diseases. The legislation continues to invest in the delivery of farm programs, disaster assistance, and crop insurance to farmers and ranchers by maintaining funding for the Farm Service Agency and the Risk Management Agency. The bill provides a $34 million increase for the Food Safety and Inspection Service to fund our nation's frontline inspectors of meat and poultry products. The bill provides $7.235 billion for the Women's, Infants, and Children's Program, a $205 million increase over fiscal year 2024 to account for the inflation caused by the Biden economy. Participation rates have been steady in recent months, and the program has significant carryover balances. I believe this increased funding level will serve all eligible participants, and USDA does have a $150 million WIC contingency fund to meet any unexpected demand. The bill also makes important investments in critical agricultural research that will keep our producers on the cutting edge of technology and production practices. We maintain funding for USDA's flagship competitive grant program, the Agriculture and Food Research Initiative. This legislation continues to fund rural development programs, including critical infrastructure investments in waste and water systems, broadband, and additional investments in certain rural housing programs. The bill includes $100 million for Reconnect to complement existing funds to deploy broadband to the most underserved rural areas. For the Food and Drug Administration, the bill provides $3.5 billion in direct appropriations, and with increased user fees, FDA has a total budget of $6.75 billion to enable the agency to keep food, drugs, and medical devices safe and effective. The bill includes $345 million for the Commodity Futures Trading Commission to continue to oversee and ensure the integrity of U.S. derivative markets. At the same time, this legislation reins in the Biden administration's wasteful, out-of-control spending. The bill provides $1 billion for the Food for Peace program, a $619 million decrease from fiscal year 2024. But before my colleagues on the other side of the aisle attempt to denounce this as a heartless cut, let's not forget that USDA transferred $1 billion from the Commodity Credit Corporation for the same purpose of providing international food aid. The Food for Peace program also has a carryover balance of $300 million. When you consider the time it takes for commodities to reach their international destination, the funding provided in this bill, plus Secretary Vilsack's unauthorized transfer of funds from the Commodity Credit Corporation, the result will be a food program with more than sufficient funding. Programs that have received significant increases through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and American Rescue Plan did not receive additional funding if sufficient balances remain available. We'll continue to monitor the expenditure of these funds as the process moves forward. On the regulatory front, this legislation reins in harmful regulations that increase the cost of doing business and make it harder to live and work in rural communities. This bill puts a stop to USDA's efforts under the Packers and Stockyards Act to dictate how poultry and livestock producers raise and market their animals. It blocks revised energy standards for newly constructed homes financed by USDA that would increase costs for rural, lower-income households in an already constrained housing market. It also builds on efforts to prevent the purchase of farmland by companies owned by our foreign adversaries by adding the Secretary of Agriculture to the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States for agriculture transactions, while providing funds for Farm Service Agency to fulfill its duty to track foreign ownership of land. The bill also prioritizes the health and nutritional needs of SNAP recipients by allowing states to voluntarily participate in a pilot program to restrict unhealthy food purchases with SNAP benefits. Let me be clear, this does not reduce funding for the program or reduce household benefits. This does not make a nationwide program change. We do know some states and cities have been interested in restricting unhealthy foods in the SNAP program, so this allows them to pilot the concept. This pilot would free up SNAP benefits to purchase healthier foods, like fruits and vegetables, and we encourage USDA to prioritize pilots that pair nutrition incentives with restrictions. Let's pilot this idea, have an evaluation, and let's see how this makes a difference in the health and lives of SNAP participants. Finally, as I said earlier, this bill takes the same approach American families take every day. They have to do more with less under the Biden economy. American families decide every day where to cut back spending to pay for what's most important. You know, we're not appropriating monopoly money. It's hard-earned taxpayer dollars, and sometimes tough decisions have to be made. In conclusion, I wanted to thank the staff on the subcommittee and would note that the subcommittee received nearly 8,000 member requests, touching every agency under our jurisdiction. The strong interest in this bill highlights its importance to the lives of all Americans. We've attempted to address both Republican and Democrat member requests within the available budget through community project funding, programmatic funding, and bill and report language. I look forward to working with all of you as the bill moves forward, and I ask for your support for this legislation. Now I will recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, Mr. Bishop, for his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Chairman Harris, for yielding. While I take note of the improved trending, and I appreciate the efforts and the trajectory of the bill compared to last year's bill, I'm still extremely disappointed that for a second year in a row, I won't be able to support the bill before the subcommittee at this time. This slate of funding bills being released by the majority steps away from the Fiscal Responsibility Act funding levels that were the foundation for the bills just passed a few short months ago, and that will be the foundation of the Senate bills. Even the programs in this bill that are maintained at a reasonable funding level are propped up by unrealistic cuts to accounts that are crucial to the functioning of USDA, including salaries and expenses for the Farm Service Agency and rural development. The bill would eliminate funding for maintaining the USDA headquarters. I'm also disheartened to see that no funding is included for urban agriculture or geographically disadvantaged farmers. There are some areas where the bill returns to the subcommittee's tradition of bipartisanship. In particular, I was pleased to see the inclusion of Section 768 on food traceability. Mr. Franklin and I have partnered on this issue to ensure that new food traceability standards are not enforced until we can be sure that it won't unduly burden the food industry. However, the areas where we find bipartisan agreement in the bill are overshadowed by the funding cuts, which would hit hardest those most disadvantaged at home and abroad, including a shocking cut of $688 million to the Food for Peace program. The Food for Peace funding level is lower than it has been in over 20 years. Other funding shortfalls include domestic nutrition programs such as TFAP, single-family direct loans, water and wastewater grants, the Rural Energy for America program, and some of our research programs, and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. I understand that the appropriate level of funding for WIC is being reviewed by the administration, but I think it's jumping the gun to be at the lower level in this bill. Perplexingly, the bill underfunds SNAP by $165 million. There's a reason that we fund this mandatory program at the full level every year, and the decision to shortchange it only jeopardizes efforts to provide food assistance to our fellow Americans who need it the most. Cuts that leave the CFTC with a shoestring budget are penny-wise and pound-foolish. This undermines its ability to oversee a multi-trillion-dollar international derivatives market on which American producers rely. The news has been rife with cyber criminals hijacking healthcare systems, utility providers, and U.S. municipalities. Yet this bill fails to invest in cybersecurity that protects the USDA and the farmers, ranchers, producers, and rural communities with which it works. Other key agencies that play an outsized part in serving our agricultural producers include the Economic Research Service and the National Agricultural Statistics Service. ERS, which provides the data analysis that the rest of USDA relies on to make decisions on everything from nutrition assistance to market support, is underfunded for the second year in a row, this time by $12.5 million. And NASS, which provides key data and reports that American farmers rely on to run their businesses and compete in a challenging market, is underfunded for a second year in a row, this time by $7 million. This year, NASS was unable to complete several important surveys, including the July cattle cotton objective yield and the county-level estimate surveys, because of insufficient funding. I'm afraid that this bill will prevent the agency from reinstating these important surveys that our producers rely on. While I'm proud of the investments that we make in our 1890 and 1994 land-grant universities and Hispanic-serving institutions, all of which are flat-funded since fiscal year 2023, I cannot overlook the steady decline for USDA's research, education, and extension activities overall. Supporting our rural communities should be the top priority for the subcommittee. Americans need critical infrastructure, such as water and wastewater systems, but the bill makes yet another cut to rural water funding, which is the lifeblood of the communities that support our farmers and ranchers. Disappointingly, the bill also contains several poison pill policy riders once again this year. These riders only serve as a distraction from the real issues this subcommittee deals with and ultimately must be removed before this bill can be passed into law. I'm absolutely appalled at the inclusion of language that would effectively block FDA from banning an electric shock device used on disabled youth. I'm surprised to see the SNAP pilot language again, which was not agreed to last year. USDA already has the authority to approve pilots, and this doesn't add anything to that authority. Why pick that fight again? I'm also not happy to see language on critical race theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion, flags, and marriage discrimination, all of which were dropped from the 2024 bill. As we debate this bill and work to improve it, we must make the necessary investments in agricultural research and rural development so that the United States remains on the cutting edge, so that our crops and our livestock become more resilient to disease, pests, and natural disasters, and so that our farmers and ranchers can be more efficient, productive, and profitable. We cannot rob Peter to pay Paul, and we definitely cannot fund 21st century agriculture needs with 20th century funding levels. This bill undermines our country's ability to continue to produce the highest quality, safest, most abundant, and affordable food, fiber, and medicine in the world. So I look forward to coming together with the members of this subcommittee, the members of the Appropriations Committee, and our colleagues in the House to find a better bipartisan bill that will fully meet the needs of all Americans and that will reject partisan riders which will divide us. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, look forward to working with you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Now I'll turn to the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Cole, for any remarks he may have.
Thank you, Chairman Harris, and thank you, Ranking Member Bishop and Ranking Member of the full committee, Delauro, and to all the members of the subcommittee for being with us today. Our markup schedule has brought some early mornings and late nights, but the idea of sunup to sundown is nothing new for America's foremost producers, our farmers and ranchers. For rural districts like the one I represent in southwest Oklahoma, agriculture is not merely a job, it's a way of life. Through production, innovation, and pure grit, American farmers and ranchers feed the world. Today's bill, the Agriculture, Rural Development, Food and Drug Administration and Related Agencies Appropriation Act for fiscal year 2025, recognizes the importance of agriculture and rural communities to our great nation. It continues critical investments in research, rural broadband, and animal and plant health programs, each of which are essential to support our nation and its future growth. This bill also takes steps to shield and preserve American farms and farming communities. It includes safeguards to prohibit foreign bad actors from purchasing agricultural land, which is a critically important issue in my district. It rolls back harmful Biden administration regulations that make farming more difficult, and it reduces wasteful spending, ensuring the American taxpayers' dollars are spent where they are needed most. As we safeguard our food supply, we also direct vital resources to protect the safety of medical drugs and devices. Each provision in this bill will help feed, fuel, heal, and connect Americans. I thank Chairman Harris and Ranking Member Bishop, as well as the majority and minority staff for their hard work on this measure, and I look forward to consideration of this bill today. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cole. I'll now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Ms. Delauro, for any remarks she may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for yielding, and my thanks go to you and to Ranking Member Bishop and to the majority and minority subcommittee staff for all of the hard work. I especially want to say a thank you to Martha Foley, to Tyler Coe, and to Alex Swan. After the majority's failure last year to pass their Agriculture, Rural Development FDA bill on the floor of the House of Representatives, I had hoped that we would mark up a bipartisan bill in this subcommittee for fiscal year 2025 that responsibly and adequately funds the bill's programs and which discards divisive and harmful riders out of the gate. Unfortunately, that did not happen. The majority is dragging us down a path to chaos with bills that do not adhere to the law and cannot become law, leading us to squander another summer rather than completing our work and passing appropriations bills on time with bipartisan and bicameral support. This bill increases costs on workers and families in rural America for basic necessities like water, energy, and housing. This bill puts food assistance at risk for the most vulnerable Americans and people around the world. And this bill jeopardizes pediatric and community health across the country. A host of cuts in this bill promise to raise the cost of living for rural Americans. Cuts to water and waste grants threaten access to clean and reliable water for rural households and businesses. A 90% cut to the Rural Energy for America program, REAP, and a pittance for the Rural Energy Savings Program will not help small businesses and agriculture producers keep up with soaring energy costs. And cuts to direct loans that help rural Americans buy homes, and the elimination of grants for farm labor housing will make it even more expensive for people in rural America to keep a roof over their head. While rural Americans are contending with an elevated cost of living, increasing energy and shelter prices would be disastrous for their households' bottom line. The majority has told us that they are looking across the federal government for where they can responsibly reduce spending. For this bill, the majority is applying their supposed X-Acto knife approach by taking food from the mouths of the hungry and vulnerable people here in America and around the world. At a time when conflict on nearly every continent and climate change are drastically increasing global hunger. This bill levies paternalistic restrictions on Americans in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, commonly referred to as the food stamp program, by including the extreme, quote, SNAP Choice, end quote, pilot program. SNAP Choice is a misnomer, as this program eliminates choices for those on food stamps, with restrictions on the types of food that can be purchased, with the added effect of reducing benefits, as the eligible foods are frequently more expensive. What we should be doing and looking into in this committee is the price gouging that is going on in the food industry, making it impossible for families to be able to produce fruits, vegetables, nutritious food, which we deem as expensive, but there's no need for it to be expensive. It's not affordable to them. There is no food shortage in the United States of America. 2 weeks ago, Target lowered the price on 5,000 food items. They can lower the price, they can raise the price, because they're allowed to do that. Let's examine price gouging and take a look at why groceries are so expensive. Furthermore, the majority proposes cutting Food for Peace by $688 million below last year, which would be the lowest level since 2002. At a time of heightened conflict, humanitarian catastrophe, and escalating risk of famine around the world, to deny basic nutrition assistance is to say that while we send American-made arms and munitions around the world, we have nothing left for hungry children and families left reeling from war and destruction and disorder in their communities. If humanity and selflessness are not reason enough to feed hungry people, please understand that failing to meet this need threatens America's national security. There are conflicts around the world where we are arming our allies' defenses, as we should and as I have proudly supported. It shouldn't be forgotten that the French Revolution was about food prices and food shortage, a revolution. When people are hungry, they make drastic decisions. But in each of these theaters, there are innocent civilians caught in the crossfire who are experiencing or at risk of famine. I worry what it conveys about America's values if bombs carrying our flag are still falling while food support for civilians dries up. I worry what the people in those regions will most remember America for. Ensuring people do not go hungry in our country and around the world is not a problem of growing food. We grow enough food in the United States. As I said, there is no food shortage, and our farmers are eager to help. Hunger is a political problem, one that share the rare and awesome power in this committee to meaningfully address. We can do that here. But this bill says that hunger is not our problem, and that should bring us all shame. As if the cuts in this bill were not bad enough, the majority continues to load up appropriations bills with harmful policy riders that divide Americans and divide the Congress. One rider is particularly barbaric. A provision in this bill, which the ranking member referenced, would prevent the FDA from stopping the use of an inhumane electrical shock device on young people at risk of hurting themselves or others, despite the well-documented dangers and shocking cruelty of this practice. Additionally, the bill prohibits the FDA from finalizing rules on dangerous flavored tobacco and nicotine products, taking the side of big tobacco over the health of our children and our communities. In short, this bill demonstrates the majority's misguided priorities: shortchanging assistance for hungry women and children, raising costs for rural Americans, and jeopardizing public health is not a responsible fiscal path. I implore the majority, abandon this strategy. Join Democrats at the table so that we can work together on bipartisan funding bills that support the American people's needs. It is time to govern. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Delauro. At this time, does any other member of the subcommittee wish to be recognized for opening remarks? Hearing none, does any member have an amendment they wish to offer? Then I'd like to recognize Mr. Valadeo for the purpose of making a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the bill be favorably reported to the full committee.
The question before us is on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no.
No.
The ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. I ask unanimous consent that the staff be permitted to make technical and conforming changes to the bill and report. Without objection, so ordered. As a reminder to members, please leave all copies of the bill and report in this room at your desk. Copies of the bill and report with the technical and conforming changes will be delivered to all full committee members' offices no later than 3 business days before the full committee markup. Without objection, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Boy, we killed a lot of trees here today. Man, we sure did.